up that Nasco Wagon Road. It was 1925, not far from Collins and Telegraph Line. Blackwater Road to 6 Mile. Homesteading meadows shining through, stopping houses for miles. Traveling up that dusty wagon road, I ain't seen no one for miles.
All right, here we go. So Mark, what were we talking about?
Well, Rob, we were talking about the Century Family Recognition Project.
Right. Where were we on that?
I believe we were going to start with the Merz family.
I know something about that.
Indeed you do.
So Walter and Minnie Merz, my grandparents, came to Bouchie Lake in 1924. They settled first just for one winter over toward Baker Creek, toward Pinnacles Park, along what is today Pinnacles Road.
Okay, I didn't know that. I thought they were originally on the Nasco property.
No, they moved to that property in 25. They first settled in 24 along toward Baker Creek, and they spent one winter there, and my grandfather figured it was not the right property. And he learned a little bit more about the area, and he bought a place just 2 miles up the Nasco Road from 6 Mile Corner.
So that suited their needs better?
It did. There was a lot of things going for it. It was a 160-acre property. It already had a cabin and a chicken house and a small barn built on it that had been built by the Lavoies a few years earlier. And it was on a creek, so that was all advantages to the property they had originally settled on.
So what brought them to this community in the first place?
That's an interesting story, actually. It probably goes back to my grandmother. So she served as a registered nurse with the Nurses Corps in the First World War, and when she was discharged, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis.
I see.
So she was quite ill with it, and she moved around a little bit trying to find a better climate to live in. And she met my grandfather in 22, and they were married, and he was from a farm in Oregon.
So they're on a farm in Oregon then?
That's right. So they're on a farm in Oregon, the family farm, and Minnie has to have regular checkups with the doctor regarding her tuberculosis. The doctor said that they need to move to some place where they have clean mountain air for her health.
So why did they have their sights set on this community?
Well, they didn't actually have their sights on this community. They were actually heading for Vanderhoof. My grandfather had traveled by train through Vanderhoof a couple of years earlier, and he had noticed that there was good farmland there, so he thought that would be the place to settle.
Well, obviously they didn't make it there.
No, there's a fellow named Bill Brocious interrupted their journey.
Interrupted it in what way?
Yeah, that's another story. We'll get to that.
All right.
So anyway, they got to Quesnel on their way to Vanderhoof, and they had to cross the river there by ferry. So the ferry is described as two canoes strapped together, and their Model T gets loaded on this little ferry and comes across the river, and they're on the Nechako Wagon Road to Vanderhoof.
And that's when they met Mr. Brocious.
They actually met Mr. Brocious in Quesnel before they even crossed the river, but that's still another story. We'll maybe get back to that.
Okay.
So they came up the Nechako Wagon Road. They ended up. What are you up to?
Hi, Walt. I'm putting some color on these old walls.
Oh, you're copying this map onto the wall?
Yes, I am. That's the map I drew in 1925.
This map drawn by Edward Oliver Purser in the year 1925. You have some skills, my friend.
Well, thank you, Walt. And that's the year that you arrived here, is it not?
No, 1924.
And that's when you met Bill Brocious.
Oh, that is right.
Did he use the line, "the land of milk and honey" on you?
Yeah, he did.
And you paid $800 for that place, is that right?
That first place, yes, the 40 acres.
Well, he sure saw you coming, didn't he?
He did.
And then you bought the second place on Nazco Road.
That's right, a year later.
And I hope you learned about the Homesteading Act at that time.
$2.
Much better deal.
Yeah, $52 total because there was some buildings already on the place.
Well, that first one, he sure saw you coming now, didn't he?
He did.
And you're still friends with him.
Absolutely, he's a good guy.
He sure is a smooth talker.
Well, he is that.
So what did they need on this new property that the old one didn't have?
Well, Walt he trained as an automotive mechanic in the Oregon Institute of Technology, and he knew that could augment a farming income. He liked to farm, but that was not going to pay all the bills. And there was an opportunity if he was along the Wagon Road for mechanical repairs. And then there's also the fact that it would be a good place for a stopping house. It was already a natural location for stopping. The First Nations had a campground just across the creek from his house. So they were already camping there when they would journey through. And wagons, freight wagons coming up from Quesnel and coming back from the Nazco both ways needed a place to stop, so he operated a stopping house for a few years there.
So automobiles must have had a tough time operating on a wagon road.
Well, they would have had a tough time, and that would have meant they needed repairs, and he was the guy to do it. And also there was very few automobiles, but locals were starting to acquire automobiles, and then they had no idea how to operate it. It wasn't gee and haw like with a horse and wagon.
I guess not.
So he taught quite a few of the pioneers in the area how to drive.
Oh, that's interesting.
So another opportunity for him.
So what else did they do other than farming and being an auto mechanic and a roadhouse?
Well, the farming was commercial. They had a large garden, and they sold produce. They'd take fresh produce down to town, sell it through Hoy's store or John A. Fraser's store. And they also had a couple dairy cows, and they had butter and cream that they would take down to the stores in Quesnel and sell.
All right.
So,
And I know that there was a sawmill on the property. Was he a miller as well?
no, that was my dad's mill. That was in later years, I think about 1950, 51. He got into the sawmilling business and had his own sawmill there.
Okay. And you said that Minnie was a registered nurse. Did she continue on in this area with that practice?
She did a little bit on a part-time, on-call type basis. If people needed help, babies being delivered, etc., they knew Minnie was a nurse, and they would call on her that they needed help. And Dr. Baker in Quesnel, G.R. Baker Hospital's named for him. He would call her, especially if he was working on this side of the river, and have him accompany him to call.
So life carried on and the community built up around them, and then?
So yeah, the community did build up around them. There was quite a bit of a population boom, I guess, in the 6 mile and 9 mile areas in the 1930s. And they had new neighbors.
And so Walt carried on for many years afterwards?
So Walt did carry on with the family farm, and he also worked with my dad when the sawmill got built, and he helped him with that, running the sawmill and doing a bit of logging. And he would continue to operate the stopping house for anybody that needed it. And then also something in the fall they would do, both my dad and my grandfather, would be to take and do some big game guiding for people from the States and from the lower mainland. That was getting popular in the area at the time.
So when would he have retired from this type of work?
Does a farmer ever retire?
I guess not.
So he was slowing down quite a bit, and late in 1966, just after Christmas, he passed away from a heart attack.
Okay, and so where would he be buried then? And Minnie as well.
So Minnie is actually buried in the Quesnel Pioneer Cemetery, and Walt is buried in the Quesnel Cemetery, which is just on the outskirts of Quesnel on the old Prince George Highway.
Well, that's a very interesting story.
I just want to mention, if you guys want to donate to the Pioneer Century Family Project, you can go to the link in the description and donate to the Friends of Bouchie Melbourne, and that's much appreciated. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, please subscribe, leave a comment, and of course, if you want to show additional support, you can always buy me a coffee. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.
Traveling up that NASCO wagon road, living the best we can, living the best we can.